Well, welcome to Perfect Pitch, which is the first webinar from Writing at the Edge. And first thing to say is that we are in this wonderful Plymouth Athenaeum Library. So many thanks to Owen and his team for allowing us to be in this wonderful place.
And this is really a fabulous location. There are something in the region of about 4,000 books here, dating back to the 16th century, believe it or not.
Yeah. So we are a collective of authors and journalists, and between us we've got over 120 years of writing and publishing experience. So what we want to do, we want to really help authors to develop their craft. So let's introduce ourselves.
I'm Keith. I used to be a journalist, and now I write novels. I've written one for adults and two for children, one for teenagers and young adults. And William.
Hi, I'm William Telford. I'm also a journalist. I've also been in that profession for more than 30 years. You might find that hard to believe, but I have. I'm also kind of the academic in this little group because I've got an MA in creative writing from the University of Plymouth. I mostly write fiction, but mostly short stories, microfiction as well, flash fiction. I've had lots of short pieces published online and in print, various publications, and a collection of short stories as well, and 2 unpublished novels. So I know a fair bit about rejection.
Hello, and I'm J.H.Mann. I write as J.H.Mann, and I'm a journalist and a writer. Once again, like some of my colleagues here tonight, I've spent much of my life as a journalist in different forms. My latest book is just out. That's The Echoing Shore. And it's typical of the sort of work that I produce. I write Cornish mystery thrillers, and this is the latest one, The Echoing Shore.
And I'm Jonathan Posner, and I write action-adventure stories set in Tudor England, and I'm currently working on my 7th novel. So, over the next hour, what we're going to do is explore the concept of pitching your novel. What we aim to do is to show you how you can craft a compelling message that will sell your story. So I think the first thing to do is just to agree amongst ourselves what kinds of pitches there are.
Can I just say before we go any further, thanks to Jane, our lovely producer, who's sitting there behind all the technology.
Yes.
So that's the escalator pitch for Jane. You've come to the right place for innovation, because I've invented this new term. You may be familiar with the idea logline, but I've come across quite a lot of people who go, logline, what does that mean? It's quite common in films, but what we have is an escalator pitch, a very short, pithy thing to tell your story quickly.
Thank you. What else have we got? Jason, how about you?
And moving on from that, we have an elevator pitch, and that is a sales pitch that could be delivered in a short elevator ride. So it's a little bit more detailed than an escalator pitch.
Okay, thank you. William, how about you?
Well, and then you've got the blurb, which is it's not about dramatics. It is the short bit that you get on the back of the novel, or maybe on the front of the novel. There's a bit there that really sums up, tells you enough to really get you wanting to buy that. It's different from the escalator and elevator pitch, in that where you're talking to in the blurb is to the reader. You're talking to your audience. You're talking to people you want to sell the book to, not to an agent or a publisher. Very important.
Okay, thank you. So that's not just one type of pitch. We've actually got 3 types of pitches. That's what we're going to cover off this evening.
So exactly, we're going to show you what we mean by each of these, which we've given a very brief idea, show you how they're used, and by the end, you will be able to create each type of pitch for yourself and use them to help you write and sell your book.
Thank you. So we'll also be reviewing pitch submissions. So thank you to all of you who have submitted pitches for us to review. And at the end of the webinar, we're going to announce the 4 that have won our one-on-one coaching session to help progress their book towards publication. We also have an interview with a traditionally published author. Keith, you suggested the escalator pitch. Can you go into a little bit more detail?
Okay, so as I said, this goes under the disguise of log line usually. But remember, escalator pitch, you heard it here first. It takes only a few seconds to put across the idea, the time you might take to get up a very short escalator. And for writers, it helps to expand the log line later into the elevator pitch. So it's a one or two sentence summary, which is what we ask for in our competition, which captures the essence of the story. Who is the protagonist? What is their goal or main challenge? What's at stake? And sometimes you can wrap all of that in an idea of what world they're in. So, for example, how about this one? A small town sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer must hunt down a deadly great white shark terrorizing a beach resort town.
I think I recognise that as Peter Benchley's Jaws. Yes, a great book and even greater film. So, Keith, why is that such a good pitch?
Well, it does all of those things very succinctly. I didn't count the number of words, but there are not many of them. Who, those three people, sheriff, marine biologist, seafarer. We know the goal or the challenge. They must hunt down this deadly great white shark, which is terrorizing the resort. And what's at stake? Well, they could die. You don't want to go, we know what happened in Jaws, and you know what sharks are like. And if they fail, it will destroy this beach resort.
I've got one. Okay, how about this? A young orphan boy discovers he has magical powers. Only he can defeat the most evil wizard who has ever lived from taking over the world.
Thanks, JP. Yeah, Harry Potter, that works as well. Who, a young orphan boy, and that's a key point, it could just be a boy, but you wouldn't create the same empathy. So by saying a young orphan boy, immediately we begin to care about this person. The goal or challenge to defeat the most evil wizard, what's at stake? The evil wizard will take over the world.
Okay, so that's the escalator pitch. Who is it for?
So to begin with, it's you as the author. It's very useful to come up with a log line or escalator pitch before you start writing, or very soon after. It might change as time goes by, but it helps to keep you on track, like a pole star for a sailor.
And it helps you to pitch the idea to other people, your friends and family, if they're going, why do we never see you? Is that familiar, anybody? Agents and publishers. So I think it'll be the top line of your submission to an agent or a publisher. And then it could be the first line of the blurb of your book. So the readers get that idea as soon as they see it on the shelf. They go, yep, that's for me. Don't take my word. Here's Sarah Bonner, who's published quite a few novels, and we can hear what she's got to say.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bonner, and I'm the author of 3 psychological thriller novels, the most recent of which came out last week. It's called How to Slay at Work, and it follows the story of Millie, who believes that her boss might just be a serial killer. And that would be a really big problem, wouldn't it?
So Sarah, how did you sell your novel to your agent?
So I first pitched this novel to my agent as being The Devil Wears Prada meets Dexter. So I'd always wanted to write a novel about a female serial killer, but I wanted it to be funny. And so I came up with a novel about a woman who thinks her boss is a serial killer. So we get that really interesting office dynamic coming through. Millie is a kind of put upon mid-20s, kind of millennial worker with this horrible, horrible boss who makes her do all kinds of hideous things, including always wearing heels in the office. And then you get this interesting spin on the situation where she starts to believe that her boss might be a serial killer. So I pitched this into my agent, as I said, with that comparison between the character that we all know from Devil Wears Prada, and then Dexter, who we all know as that serial killer. The idea being to really hammer home this kind of mashup of different genres so that my agent would instantly know the kind of novel that I was anticipating to write.
Did you have that pitch in your head when you started the novel?
So whenever I start planning a novel, I always go straight to that pitch first. So can I sell it in a single line? And once I can sell it in a single line, can I then sell it in a couple of paragraphs? So before I even start writing anything, I will go to my agent or my editor if it's a book in a series that I've already been contracted to write. And I'll just do a single page, one-page summary that says, this is the log line, this is the pitch, just so that it has that real focus right from the beginning. So I know that there's a book there, and I know that there's a book that we can actually sell into the market.
The blurb on the back cover, how does that relate to your original thinking on the book? Is that something created new when you come to write the blurb, or has it always been there?
So generally with the blurb on the back of the book, that's normally written by my editor. However, for certainly the first and last book that I've written, actually that's not strayed very far from my original pitch. So my original pitch tends to inform how my agent sells it into my publisher. And then my publisher has generally kept a very, very similar vibe going through. And I think a big reason for that is having that pitch right from the beginning and then constantly referring back to it so that I make sure that the book that I'm writing is the book that I pitched right from the beginning.
We've had some escalator pitch submissions from people who have joined the webinar, hopefully. Do you want to introduce them for us?
Thanks. Thank you, Jonathan. Yes, we have. And I've got them here. And let me read those to you now. So the first one is from Nellie Harper. And it relates to her 4-book fantasy series, The Dark Days of Magic. And this is the pitch. The oligarchy, a corrupt ruling body, has been complicit in the eradication of magicians from society, keeping them secretly in Blackwell House. Just how many secrets and lies will be uncovered before the truth is revealed and the magicians can start fighting back? So let me go to you, Jonathan, first of all. What are your thoughts on that particular pitch?
My thought is that we don't really know who the protagonist is here. Is it the oligarchy? Is it the magicians? We're not quite sure. So I think I'm assuming it's the magicians because it's them that needs to start fighting back. But I'm not 100% certain if that's the case. And for me, it just feels maybe a little bit too long with actually not quite enough information.
Thank you. And Keith?
Yeah, absolutely. Where's Blackwell House? I think it's either a detail too many or a detail too few. But all by itself, Blackwell House means nothing to any one of us. And we need to know what their jeopardy is. What's at stake in all of this? Is somebody going to die, or is it a nice, cosy, open prison in the Scandinavian model?
And Will?
Well, again, I think it's a little bit too long, really, for an escalated pitch. And again, I agree with you. There's some elements missing. I don't really get who the protagonist is here. It talks about magicians, but who? When we talked about Harry Potter and the line about being an orphan, you're immediately sympathising. You want to be somebody relatable there, so perhaps you need to explain who the main character is.
Okay, thanks for that. I would agree with the comments that have been made. A further thought from myself, it's a small point, but use the word complicit. I think there could be a better word for that. I mean, complicit rather implies that there's somebody else involved that the oligarchy are working with. I just wonder if there's a better word to cover something like that. So thanks very much for your comments on the Dark Days of Magic. So the second one on my list is a very short one. It's from a lady called Anna Brazel, and this relates to her story, The Red Hot Blues Chanteurs. And the pitch on that one is funny girl vaudevillian meets girl with a gun, cop sister meets a brilliant poison. Jonathan, what do you make of that one?
I think it's a great line. I'm not totally certain I understand it. I know what funny girl is, and excuse me, and I can guess what a brilliant poison is. And of course, girl with a gun sort of speaks for itself. So I think it all works, but it's references that I'm not personally aware of.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Yeah, before I say, because of the internet problems we've had, if anyone's watching, could you put a line in the chat to say whether you can hear us or not? But as for the pitch, I agree. I don't know all of those. I know Funny Girl, everyone does, but maybe younger readers wouldn't know. So yeah. So that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you, Will.
Well, I kind of like it, but I don't really think it's a pitch. It's a bit like the blurb you might get on the front of a book. You can see this one here. It says, "You killed to be her." Doesn't really tell you anything about the story, but it's intriguing. It makes you want to know a bit more. And I think this does the same job, but it's not really a pitch. As to really who the character is, well, everything that you said earlier.
It's more of a log line, really.
Yeah, the log line. Yeah, it's got to really tell us a bit more, really.
Okay, thanks for that. I mean, my thoughts are much the same. I suppose on the bright side, it's very punchy. I wasn't really clear what a brilliant poison was. I wasn't familiar with that story. So I think one of the things I would say on this is that where you are citing something that people know, as you gentlemen mentioned, Funny Girl is certainly well known, but make sure you're picking a story which is sufficiently well known that really the vast majority of the audience will understand it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for that one. So we're now going to move on to a submission from Edie Kay. And this is a pitch relating to a queer historical romance that she's going to pitch to a publisher when she has the idea fleshed out more. So this is the pitch. In Victorian era Edinburgh, a non-binary male passing automaton maker, that was a bit of a mouthful, owns a shop next door to a bisexual femme tea blender with synesthesia. Hijinks and love ensue, full of gothic vibes, a femme twist, steamy, low angst, and perfect for autumn. Now, where can I go with that one? Will, let's start with you.
I've got to say, I quite like it. I'm not sure what synesthesia is, but that's me. It certainly there's a lot of, not the right word for them all, but there's words in there, mostly to do with genre, which are really going to be like catnip to a lot of agents at the moment, because it's kind of what's on point, especially with young millennial readers. That, I think, is a real positive on this one. It does bamboozle me, some of the language in it, though. There's a lot in there. But I think it's okay, really. It's a good... It generates your interest, I would say.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much to pick out of this, isn't there? Every sort of trope is in there. Non-binary, male passing, automaton maker. I mean, there's so much in here that I could never have thought of that it absolutely intrigues me. I just love the whole concept. It's just so off the wall, and I love it. I think it's very, very, very interesting.
Okay,
I'd love to read it.
Thank you. Keith?
I'd love to write it. I hope the writer has a lot of fun. You could go the other way, and I'd be worried if somebody went that in the direction of a political agenda. I think it sounds like a great kind of magical realism type of story. And let's hope EDK is intending to go down that route.
And I think it's something that really sets you back, and you think, and you take another look at it, which of course is one of the most important things of a pitch, isn't it, really? I think there's some really interesting wording in there that does help capture your attention. I like the description at the beginning, Victoria era Edinburgh. I think that immediately sets you in a particular place, which is very good. And I think there's some very interesting comments in there with that one. Synesthesia.
I'll explain that, because I have a synesthete in my new young adult novel, White Raven. The synesthesia is where the kind of sensors in your brain are linked. So a synesthete might, if they hear a particular musical note, see an associated colour with it. It's wonderful. It seems to be a wonderful ability, and I wish I could.
You smell colour, or you see smell.
It's crossover sensors, so it's not limited to only two.
So I suppose the question mark in my mind then is, should you have a word like that, then clearly a lot of people are not going to understand in your pitch.
Yeah, true enough.
That's a good point.
It's a good point. But again, it does make you think, what does that word mean? And it grabs you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's not dull.
It's not dull, and it really is sort of quite a wow pitch, really. Okay, thanks very much for that. So number 4 is one from Alina Rubin. And this relates to a story called Abigail's Song, which is already published. Let me read that one to you. Narrowly avoiding a life on the streets in 1810 England, orphaned Abigail is adopted into a Jewish family where she finds herself in the middle of a conflict between her heart, her beliefs, and her dreams of a life surrounded by music. When she grows up, Abigail is caught between two worlds. Not Christian enough for the Gentiles, but as a non-Jew, she has no hope of marrying David, the man she dreams of. Guilt and misery drive her to take drastic actions. Will, what do you think of that one?
I think it's very good. I really liked it. Is it too? The question would be: is it too long for an escalator pitch? Probably is. Probably make a good elevator pitch, which we're going to come on to later. But I think it's really well set out. It does make you want to know more. It says where everything's set. It tells you about the protagonist, just enough information to make you interested in that person, and it tells you about the basic central conflict. I think it does a good job, but it's probably not not an escalator pitch.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
You should always avoid starting a sentence with a verb that ends in ing. Even if you try to disguise it by adding an adverb in front of it, you're still starting with that verb. So I turn it around, make it much more. It becomes much more powerful if you use a more active verb.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan.
I find it fascinating. I think there's a lot of detail. I totally agree with Will that what we're looking at here is not an escalator pitch. It's very much it's a back of the book blurb. It goes all the way, I think, up to that. Mm-hmm. So in terms of what we're discussing right here, right now, it's a fantastic pitch. It's a very good pitch. It gives you a lot of detail. It's not an escalator pitch, but it's a very good blurb.
Yes, I really love the description in it. It does really paint a picture very well, doesn't it? I mean, a couple of minor thoughts I had. You could actually shorten it a little bit just by changing a few of the words around. So, for example, do you need the section where it says when she grows up? Could you just start that sentence straight with Abigail is caught between two worlds? Mm. Do you need to say that? When you're saying she has no hope of marrying David, the man she dreams of, would it be easier to say she has no hope of marrying her true love, David? So a couple of minor thoughts on myself there, but a very interesting pitch, and I think it really does create a very interesting image in my mind, certainly, and yours as well. So the next one, and this one is submitted by somebody who's asked for her name not to be used, but this is the pitch. A series of twisting tales set in a coastal fantasy world, created out of 7 unique and adventurous islands, waiting to be explored by a family of characters who you can follow their journeys of emotions, decisions and unknowing battles they face in their quirky lives. Who knows where it may take them? Jonathan?
Yes, I mean, there's... My problem with this is that I don't really know what this story is. There are potentially 7 different stories here. We are maybe talking about a journey, because it says journeys of emotions, decisions and unknown battles. For me, this is a little bit too vague. It's too vague because we don't really know what we've got here. We've just got maybe a sort of 7-book series, or maybe we've got 7 sort of mini stories within one book. I just don't really quite know what it is that it's saying.
Okay, Keith.
Exactly. It has a lot of potential if handled correctly, because a series is quite a good commercial proposition. And this is a quest, which is one of the very regular and well-known tropes in writing. But I don't know enough about it.
Okay, thank you, Will.
Yeah, I think I like it again. I think, again, it's probably not an escalator pitch. The one thing I would like to know more of is the protagonist. You mentioned a family, but who's his family? And who's the central character of the family? Is it one of the kids? Is it the dad, the mum? Is the matriarch trying to hold them all together? And what really is there? What's the conflict here? I know we've got it, and they've got a series of, like a journey for a series of islands, but what happens? Where's the danger? Where's the threat? What do they have to? What's the goal at the end of it? So there's a lot more you really could be in this. But again, it's interesting. It makes you want to know more.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I agree with much of what was said now. I would say that I would certainly want to know a little bit more about why they're embarking on this journey. Are they trying to escape from something? If they are, there's an opportunity maybe there with the pitch as well. So I'm going to go on to the final pitch now, and we're getting quite short on time, so I'm going to ask each of you gentlemen just to keep it to 1 sentence, if that's possible. And this is from Susan McConaughey, and she writes as Georgina de Grey, and this relates to a novel called Then Time Stands Still. Now, Suzanne submitted this, but she's not in the competition, she said. So, but she thought it'd be interesting to hear feedback on her particular pitch. So thank you for sending this to us, Suzanne. And this is the pitch. He could be the perfect lover, but can she help him overcome the problems that stand in the way? Jonathan?
Not enough information for me. There's so many different stories that you could actually tell against that one line. I'm not seeing enough detail to give me enough to hang it on and understand what it is that this book's about.
Okay, thank you, Keith.
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, I think she's written quite a few books and quite successful, but as a blurb, I would like to see more about what the actual thing that prevents him being the perfect lover is.
Thank you.
And my escalator pitch for the escalator pitch is, it sounds again like the bit you have on the front of the book, and it would be ideal for that. But you need to know a bit more about her, a bit more about him, and a bit more about the conflict.
Okay, thanks very much. I agree with what you said. I mean, as I say, it'd be nice to know more about who he is, who she is, and what the problems are.
Yeah.
So thank you for those comments on those submissions, and thank you to everybody who submitted their submissions. They're very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, so quick recap. We've covered the escalator pitch, the really short starting pitch. What do we go on to next? Jason, you mentioned the elevator pitch. Do you want to take us through that?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks very much. So, the elevator pitch is a more detailed version in many respects of an escalator pitch. As I mentioned earlier, it's the sort of thing you would, if you've got 30 seconds in a lift with some famous publisher and you want to pitch your book to them, this is the opportunity. You've got 30 seconds and therefore it would be a little bit more detailed than maybe a single line. you're still answering the same questions as you would be in an escalator pitch. You know, who are the protagonists ideally? What is their goal or challenge? What's at stake as well? And often what is their world as well? But now you're adding in more information. You might add in, for example, the title of the story. You might mention the genre. You might mention the length of the story. You might mention who the competitors are as well. So it's very much something of probably around, typically often around 4 or 5 sentences, I would say.
Do you reckon you could give us an example, Jason?
So we talked about Harry Potter earlier on, and I was writing down while somebody was reading that one out, and I think we had something like, on the escalator pitch, we had something like, a young orphan boy discovers he has magical powers. Only he can defeat the most evil wizard who has ever lived from taking over the world. So,
Slide you want to show that, Jason. We've got a US bit on there.
No, it's not.
so we
Okay,
Shows.
we've got a different one. Can we show the slide on that? No.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Apologies, we have.
Okay.
All right, so let's carry on. Carry on. Let's go.
Whoops. Whoops.
okay.
Magic, it was all magic.
Yes, absolutely. So with Harry Potter's help. So we could expand that to say something like Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone is a magical realism adventure for readers 12 and upwards. Harry is a young orphan boy who discovers there's a wizarding world, and he is actually a very special wizard himself. And
So we could add in competitors, we could add in
that,
and so on.
and then I think what we would also say beyond that is, as the boy who lived, he must stop the evil Voldemort from regaining his powers and taking over the world. So can Harry harness his powers and stop the Dark Lord before he regains enough strength to carry out his evil plan? So what you can see from that is, that's longer, it's 4 or 5 sentences. There was a slight gap in the middle, I was gathering my thoughts there. But you can see there that it's more detailed, it covers a lot of other areas, and it gives you a name of the title of the story as well.
Okay, so if you're pitching this to an agent, what else would you need to think about beyond, the pitch itself?
So this isn't about the pitch, but more about the choice of agent and the covering letter. So I was at the London Book Fair earlier this year, and one of the things that came out with that from agents was how often they get approaches from writers, and it's something that either is of no interest to them whatsoever because they don't cover that particular genre, or indeed in some cases the agent has stated that they're not actually taking submissions at the moment. So what I would say first of all is research your agents. What are their own tastes? What books do they publish or represent? Show you understand their preferences. So when you're writing that covering letter that you sent out, make sure you personalise that letter as much as you reasonably can. There's a lot of information available on agency websites and indeed online, where you can learn a lot about the thoughts and the preferences of agents. So this is a really, really important point, to personalise your approach to an agent, because they get literally thousands of approaches. So this is really key, and understanding who you're dealing with.
Okay, thank you. William, you gave us the third pitch, the blurb, and this is effectively your pitch to the reader. or the writer's pitch to the reader. And it can be on the back of the book, it could be on an online store page. I think you've got some books here that you wanted to show us.
Yeah, I do, yes. One is very interesting is The Life of Xana by Emily Jane Hodgkin. So now, Emily Jane is someone I know. She's an author I know. She had incredible success in this, and it fits nicely between what Jason said and talking about the blurb, because I interviewed her about how she approached her agent, and she had an incredible success, and the first agent she wrote to took her on, and her book was published. And she said, you're not just trying to convince the agent that the book is good, but you're trying to convince them that they can sell it. She says they are looking for books that fill a gap in the market. She researched her agent and said that she mentioned on her social media that she liked a TV show called Apple Tree Yard, which I've never seen, but Emily Jane had seen it, and she wrote that in the letter, that there were parallels between that show and this book, and that helped sell it. But she said also that, and I'll use her words here, it was a contemporary, exciting and sellable theme, influencing and social media. They're a big part of this. These are brand topics, and it's a millennial woman's kind of a thriller. Those were selling well at the time. A lot of agents and publishers are interested in selling genre novels because they're easy to market. So we're moving on to the blurb now. Now, if you read the blurb on the back of this, it's really good. Paige White and Hannah Zagalo used to be inseparable. After their fates intertwined at university, Xana's rise to influence and fame beckoned, and she invited aspiring journalist Paige to join her for the ride. And it goes on like that. It's really good. So we're getting into blurbs now. As we said earlier, the blurb is a short description of a book. It's produced by the people who produced the book. So in many cases, this will be you, the writer, and it's there for you to talk to the audience, to the person you're trying to sell it to. These audiences have invested a lot. You want them to invest their money and their time in your book, so you really want to attract them, but you also want to deliver on what you're saying there. You don't want to disappoint your reader. A disappointed reader can be a very harsh critic, and a happy reader can be one of the you can tie them in for life. They might read everything you've ever done. So you need to really ask a lot of questions, and sort of say a lot of things about the book in there, about the story. It's kind of like the escalator pitch and the elevator pitch writ large. So you need to cover who the protagonist is, what their goal is, what's the challenge, what's the conflict, the hurdle they have to overcome, what's at stake. You've got to tease the reader with enough information to excite them, to make them want to go on. It's a bit like a newspaper headline. It's got to make them want to grasp it and take it, grip them by the throat, somebody once said to me, and don't let go. So you've got to kind of like a pattern. There's various ways of doing this, but basically you'd start with a really dynamic first sentence, a hook. It's going to grab them, a bit like the intro to a news story. And then you've got to set out the time, the place, the setting. Where are they? And then you go into the main character. Who is that main character? What's the reason the character is going to be sympathetic, or you're going to be relatable? Is it going to be influencers, this sort of thing? If you're talking to millennial women, what's going to make you feel for that person, identify with that main character? And then you've got to raise the stakes, the rising action, the conflict. What's going to get to them? Some people talk about the mic drop moment. Now this is interesting. This is a bit like the comedian who says a great word, then that's it, I'm out, drops the mic, bang. I've got a great example here. A science fiction writer called J.H.Mann wrote a book called Moonfall, and it was cited for having a very good, it's pretty too short for a blurb, but it was on the book, and it said a comet is coming, it's going to hit the Earth, so it's going to hit the moon, and the moon is going to fall on us. And that was the mic drop moment for him. So that's one of the key pieces there. You can go on, you can have comparison points. for lovers of, if you like Agatha Christie, you'll love this book, that type of thing. And you can go on to call for action at the end. So, that's the will the hero, will the boy get the girl? Will the girl get the boy? Will the girl get the girl? You can go on. Will the world be saved? Will the nuclear bomb not go off? You have to ... You've got to read on to find out. But don't give away the ending. I read about somebody complaining that he picked up a book, Kafka's The Trial, and read the back, and it gave away everything that happened in it. And he put it down again and didn't buy it. And don't go over the top. There's a great example. Bret Easton Ellis, he was asked to write the blurb on the back of, I can never get his name right, but Mark Z. Dalieski's wonderful book, House of Leaves. And it's actually a marvellous book, but he wrote this glowing report that just went too far on the back, and he said it renders most other fiction meaningless. And people looked at that and just went, oh, come on. So it actually worked against the book. So don't oversell it, don't give away too much, but intrigue your audience, make them want to read on, and give them enough information to excite them.
We've got a blurb there that you perhaps could read out, and we'll put up on the screen as well and see if we think it works.
Is it?
Oh,
this was the right. 8 contestants, 1 killer. Are you ready to play? Everything is a clue. Bonnie arrives on a remote seaport off the coast of England to take part in a mysterious reality TV show. She's competing against 7 strangers. She must solve a series of puzzles to win the prize money. But this is no game, and the consequences of failure are deadly. No one leaves. Under scrutiny of the watching public, the contestants quickly turn on one another. Who will sacrifice the most for wealth and fame? And why can't Bonnie shake the creeping sense that they are not alone?
I really like that. The only question I would have about this one, it's a dangerous game. It's the Hunger Games, kind of. But in the Hunger Games, they've got no choice but to take part. Why is Bonnie foolishly risking her life in this game? We need. You could have created, with that blurb, they could have created some empathy. Perhaps Bonnie's mother was dying of cancer and needed an expensive operation. But other than that, it's a lovely blurb.
I think it works very well, actually. And there is more you could do, but it's got the character in there. It's got the rising action. It's kind of got the mic drop moment. No one leaves. But it's also got those calls for actions at the end. Who will sacrifice the most for wealth and fame? Why can't Bonnie shake the creeping sense that they are not alone? It's what happens next. Yeah, they often end with a question or a ...
Okay. So we've got some. Have we got some? Sorry, do you want to summarise, Pete?
Well, not really. Sorry about the technical problems. And as a result, we have got people watching. I see on screen we've got 10 subscribers, but no one. Some people were posting in the chats in the first version, but now we've gone over here. So you guys have kept your fingers still. So we will have to think of some questions that you might have asked. How about this? Do you need help to create these things? And the reason I ask this is because in my latest young adult novel, I wrote a blurb that I thought was brilliant. And then these guys looked at it and said, nah, it's rubbish. Almost in those words. And actually between us, we've created what I think is a really singing blurb. So can we as writers work on our own?
I would absolutely say that the worst person, if I may say so, to write the blurb is the writer. Because you know too much about the book. You know too much about the story. Everything is important, because you as the writer know everything about it, and you want to put all of that across. And actually, you might be the right person to sort of open up a sort of a sketched out blurb, to give a start to the blurb writing process. But it really takes other people who are not so close to the work to be able to actually stand back and just say, no, these are the most important points. This is all the reader needs to know in order to make them buy the book. And so I'm a firm believer that while the author might be the start point for the blurb, it should involve other people, to answer your question.
I think, yes. I mean, I would largely agree with that. I think the person who actually writes the blurb, the author, of course, they know more about the story and the way they've created that story better than anybody else. But I think the important thing here is getting enough feedback, because what makes writing better is feedback from others. And that, I think, is, personally for me, that's the key really to creating a really good blurb. It's actually, and a pitch, it's actually putting something down. For me, what I would do is I would put something down on paper, and then I would share it with as many people as I could and get feedback from them.
Mm.
I think the pitch and the elevator and escalator pitches, you should definitely write them yourself, but share them, because if other people don't grasp them and don't get excited by them, they're not working.
Mm.
But if other people go, oh, I like the sound of that,
Mm.
then you will know you're doing well. With blurbs, I think it's different. I was always told, just go into, I brought some examples, just go into a bookshop, pick up a book, read what they've written. All these books here have got blurbs on the back, and you can get an idea of what they're like, because they have been written by professionals. And I think that I agree with Jason that probably the best, maybe you could write a blurb, but somebody else could edit it. But certainly a second person, really looking outside at the book, who knows what they think is the selling point, is probably the best person to be in charge of the blurb.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, I think agents will often be the ones who do write the blurbs. I think it was Emily's agent who wrote the blurb for this one.
Yes, I think so. Yeah, and I think they know the audience they're trying to attract, so they know the sort of buzzwords that they're going to put in there that are going to attract those people in the bookshop. You pick it off the shelf and possibly only look at that and the front cover, and then just make that decision on that alone.
So
Whether to buy it.
Is there a difference between a blurb for a thriller compared to a historical fiction drama? Is there different?
I've picked a few books just that I've read recently, different types of ones, to have a look at the blurbs. And for instance, like here, this is A Room with a View, E.M. Forster. The blurb on the back here basically does everything that the blurb for this modern millennial thriller Life as Anna does, as does Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, another recent millennial kind of book. And it still goes to all those sort of things that we said earlier. In A Sunny Tale of Love and Liberation, Lucy Honeychurch is transformed by the characters she meets on her first trip to Italy. Flamboyant romantic novelist Eleanor Lavish, the Cockney Signora, lower class Mr. Emerson, and most of all his passionate unconventional son. Returning to her traditional home and family, Lucy finds herself torn between the intensity of her experiences in Italy, this is the conflict, and the repressed morals of English middle class society, a conflict personified in two very different young men she finds courting her attention. And that's it.
Mm.
It's a classic, it's over 100 years old, but it still goes through all those rules, and it gives away enough of the plot, but not all of the plot. And, well, so there's two men after her. Who's she going to choose? This is the rising action.
So it's the pitch to the reader that really works.
Yeah.
And don't, as William said, don't give away the whole game.
Yeah.
I'm a rare exception to the modern trend, and I still read the newspaper and paper. But if a headline tells me the whole story, unless it's an area that I really care about, I'll just turn the page to the next story. Because after all, if you know the whole story, in a headline, in a blurb, why bother to pay for the,
This is true.
the book?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's to lead you in. It's to open the gate for you,
Yeah.
isn't it, to go through.
I want to know the answer. I better buy the book.
Yeah, who you should choose. Who? Yeah. If you to say, and then, but she thinks so and so's better. That's it. You're putting it down again.
So what about your own escalator pictures? Give me your favourite novel, and what was your escalator pitch for that?
What I've written?
That you've written.
That I've written.
Yeah.
You put me on the spot. Now. I'm going to try and think. Yeah.
Anybody else? Jason.
The one for the Mary Fox book is you only find out what you're capable of when you're put to the test, something along those lines. But that's the top line of the blurb.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you mine because I loved it. I'm sorry about that. It came to me halfway through writing the novel, and it never left my head after that. Is the chaos came, and it was beware the Greeks bearing grudges, which I thought I was patting myself on the back.
Yeah.
Nobody else has, but go on, pat.
No,
Give me a
I'll
pat.
give you a pat. That's nice. That's the sort of thing you would look really good on the front of a book, wouldn't it? I think not all these books have got anything on the front, but a couple of them have. That's a tricky thing as well. That's almost like taking your escalator pitch and cutting it down to like 2 or 3 words.
Yeah.
One sentence.
I've done that for The Witchfinder as well, which is a time travel story, and I've just said Outlander meets the Tudors.
Very good. Yeah.
That's it.
So it's the guy who fell off the escalator on the second step.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is good because you're bringing 2 genres together and hitting fans of both.
Yeah.
With that.
Well, it's very much a sort of log line, isn't it?
Yeah.
So how have we done then? What have we done tonight?
So we haven't chosen our winners yet. Have
Yeah, we haven't.
No, we need to do that.
But
Very
before we do
important.
that, shall I? We'll go through what we've actually done tonight, and hopefully that helps. So we set out to show you what we mean by each type of pitch: an escalator pitch, an elevator pitch, a blurb. To show you how they're used, how to help you create each type of pitch yourself, to use them to help you both write and sell your book. Remember, use it to help you keep on track with your story.
So we invited people to submit their pitches, and we said there would be prizes of a 1-to-1 coaching session for 4 of our winners. And Jason, I think you've got the names of the winners. Or is it?
I think we actually will.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I beg your pardon.
So the 4 winners we've chosen are Nellie Harper for her 4-book fantasy, The Dark Days of Magic. The unnamed person who wrote the coastal fantasy world at the Family on the 7 Islands. Alina Rubin for Abigail's Song, and Anna Brazel for Red Hot Blues Chanteuse. If I've said that correctly.
So congratulations to them. They each win a 1.5 hour session to help them in their journey towards publication. So just to finally wrap up, we are writing at the edge, and we hope you've enjoyed this webinar. Again, many apologies. It is our first webinar. We have had a few technical issues, and for which we do apologise. But I think we've hopefully got there in the end. We are back next Thursday. Not next Thursday. Our next webinar is on Thursday, November the 7th, which is in about 4 weeks' time, I think. And it is world building in fiction writing. And we'll be going through some techniques for creating immersive and believable worlds in genres such as fantasy, science fiction, and historical fiction. So please go ahead and book in for the free webinar, and we will be circulating the link. Is it coming up on screen? I think it's coming up on screen. So yes, the link is there. You can use your phone to scan the QR code. We hope you found this useful, and we hope you're now feeling more confident in preparing your pitch at each of the 3 stages that we've identified in the writing and publishing of your novel. And you can watch this webinar again. I think it might even be in 2 parts. I'm not sure because of the loss we had of the internet.